Human males breed with a third leg? Preposterous, Tyro exclaimed, her multifaceted eyes fixed on the flickering holographic display. The Xindi xenobiologist's antennae twitched with excitement as she pored over the intercepted Earth transmissions. Deep space signals, laden with information about human reproductive biology, had fallen into the hands of the advanced alien race. Their initial analysis led to a startling conclusion. Human males possessed an additional appendage used for procreation. Tyro's laboratory aboard the Xindi research vessel hummed with activity. Fellow scientists clustered around consoles, debating the implications of this extraordinary discovery. The ship's sterile, metallic interior contrasted sharply with the organic forms of its occupants, their exoskeletons gleaming under the harsh artificial light. High Council, Tyro addressed the holographic projections of her superiors. I propose an immediate research mission to Earth. This unique anatomy could revolutionize our understanding of bipedal species and potentially offer significant military applications. The council members chittered among themselves before the lead counselor spoke. Proposal approved, xenobiologist Tyro. Proceed with caution. Earth must not detect our presence. Within hours, the Xindi vessel entered Earth's orbit, its advanced cloaking technology rendering it invisible to human detection systems. Tyro's team worked feverishly, calibrating their equipment for the delicate operation ahead. Their target, Will Roberts, a 28-year-old human male residing in New York City. Under cover of darkness, a beam of energy pierced the night sky, bypassing the bustling cityscape to extract Will from his apartment. In an instant, he vanished from his bedroom, reappearing in a cold clinical examination room aboard the alien ship. Will's eyes fluttered open, confusion etched across his face as he found himself strapped to an examination table. Tyro loomed over him, her alien features a mix of curiosity and determination. "Where is third leg?" she demanded in broken English, gesturing at his lower body. Panic surged through Will as he realized the alien's fixation on his genitals. He struggled against his restraints, trying to explain human anatomy, but the language barrier proved insurmountable. Tyro, growing frustrated, intensified her examination procedures, probing and scanning Will's body with increasingly invasive instruments. In a surge of adrenaline, Will managed to break free from his bonds. He bolted from the examination room, heart pounding as he navigated the labyrinthine corridors of the Xindi ship. Alarms blared and alien voices echoed through the halls as Tyro ordered her crew to recapture the escaped human. Will's mind raced, searching for a way back to Earth. He stumbled upon a communications array, its alien symbols pulsing with energy. With trembling hands, he attempted to send a distress signal, praying it would reach someone who could help. Unbeknownst to Will, his message was intercepted by a clandestine human organization tasked with monitoring extraterrestrial activity. As they mobilized a covert team to investigate and rescue Will, global military forces detected the sudden appearance of an alien vessel in Earth's orbit. The Xindi ship's cloaking device had failed, a result of Will's frantic attempts to operate the unfamiliar technology. As Will continued to evade capture, inadvertently causing malfunctions throughout the ship, Earth teetered on the brink of interplanetary conflict. The secret human organization raced against time, knowing they must reach Will before the situation spiraled out of control. Trapped aboard an alien vessel, pursued by creatures intent on unlocking the secrets of his non-existent third leg, Will Roberts found himself at the center of a cosmic misunderstanding. The fate of two worlds now rested on his ability to prove his humanity and prevent a war born from a critical error in alien research. Will's heart raced as he sprinted through the alien corridors, the sound of his bare feet slapping against the cold metal floor echoing in his ears. Alarms blared throughout the ship, their harsh tones mingling with the shouts of his Xindi pursuers. He darted around a corner, narrowly avoiding a grasping tentacle as one of the alien crew members lunged for him. Suddenly, the floor beneath Will's feet seemed to vanish. He found himself floating, limbs flailing as he tried to orient himself in the sudden absence of gravity. The corridor around him was filled with drifting objects, tools, data pads, and even a few startled Xindi who had been caught off guard by the malfunction. Will's mind raced, processing the situation. He reached out, grabbing onto a protruding pipe, and used it to propel himself forward. As he sailed through the air, he noticed pockets where gravity still functioned normally. He timed his movements, pushing off walls and ceilings to navigate the chaotic environment. Behind him, Tyro's voice rang out, distorted by the ship's malfunctioning communication system. "Capture the human! We must complete our research!" Will's body tingled, a strange warmth spreading through his limbs. His senses sharpened, the world around him coming into hyperfocus. He reacted with lightning speed, dodging, grasping appendages, and darting through narrow openings with uncanny precision. As he rounded another corner, Will found himself face to face with a holographic interface pulsing with alien symbols. Without thinking, he reached out and touched it. The world around him shifted, immersing him in a sea of data. Alien language flowed into his mind, concepts and ideas merging with his thoughts. Will gasped as understanding bloomed within him. He saw the Xindi's history, their scientific achievements, and the misunderstanding that had led to his abduction. "Incredible," he breathed, his fingers dancing across the holographic controls with newfound confidence. Tyro burst into the room, her multifaceted eyes widening at the sight of Will operating the Xindi technology. "How is this possible?" she chittered in her native language. To her astonishment, Will responded in perfect Xindi. "There's been a terrible mistake," he said, gesturing to the data displays around them. "Humans don't have a third leg for breeding. What you saw was something else entirely." Tyro's antennae twitched as she processed this information. "But our research was based on a misinterpretation," Will finished. He pulled up images of human anatomy, explaining the basics of human reproduction. As understanding dawned on Tyro, the ship lurched violently. Alarms blared with renewed intensity. "The propulsion systems are overloading," Tyro exclaimed, rushing to a nearby console. "We're losing altitude." Will joined her at the controls, his enhanced mind quickly grasping the complexities of Xindi technology. "We need to reroute power from the auxiliary systems," he said, fingers flying over the alien interface. Together, they worked to stabilize the ship, their earlier conflict forgotten in the face of impending disaster. Meanwhile, in Earth's orbit, a sleek black shuttle shimmered into existence beside the Xindi vessel. Inside, Commander Jack Hawkins addressed his team. "Remember, our primary objective is to extract the civilian," he said, his voice steady and authoritative. "Engage the Xindi only if necessary, and use non-lethal force." The team nodded, checking their advanced stealth gear one last time. Hawkins activated the phase-shifting technology, and they stepped through the hull of the Xindi ship as if it were no more substantial than a hologram. Once inside, they encountered chaos. Xindi crew members floated helplessly in zero-gravity pockets, while others scrambled to restore ship functions. Hawkins signaled his team to move forward, their movements silent and precise. They encountered their first resistance near the ship's central hub. A group of Xindi security personnel, armed with energy weapons, blocked their path. Hawkins raised his hand, activating a sonic disruptor. The Xindi clutched their heads in pain as high-frequency waves assaulted their senses, allowing the human team to slip past unnoticed. As they fought their way deeper into the ship, the vessel's descent towards Earth accelerated. In the ship's control room, Will and Tyro worked frantically to regain control. "The gravitational compensators are offline," Tyro reported, her voice strained. "We can't break free of Earth's pull." Will's mind raced, processing the alien data at incredible speeds. "What if we reverse the polarity of the shield generators?" he suggested. "We could create a repulsive force to slow our descent." Tyro's eyes widened. "That might actually work." They implemented the plan, the ship shuddering as the repurposed shields fought against Earth's gravity. Slowly, their descent began to stabilize. On Earth, General Marcus Steele stood in the EDI command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the Xindi ship's trajectory. His weathered face was etched with tension as he addressed the world leaders on screen. "The alien vessel is on a collision course with New York City," he reported grimly. "We need to make a decision now." The President of the United States spoke up. "What are our options, General?" Steele's lips pursed. "We can attempt to shoot it down over the ocean, but there's no guarantee we can penetrate its shields. Alternatively, we can try to establish communication and hope they respond. As the leaders debated, Steele's gaze remained fixed on the ship's trajectory, watching for any sign of change. Back on the Xindi vessel, Commander Hawkins and his team finally reached the control room. They burst in, weapons raised, only to find Will and Tyro working side by side at the ship's controls. "Mr. Roberts," Hawkins called out, lowering his weapon slightly. Will turned, relief washing over his face. "Commander, thank God you're here. We need help stabilizing the ship." Hawkins hesitated for a moment, then nodded to his team. "Assist them," he ordered, moving to Will's side. "What's the situation?" As Will quickly explained the events that had transpired, Tyro watched the humans work with a mixture of awe and confusion. The ease with which they adapted to Xindi technology challenged everything she had believed about human capabilities. With the combined efforts of Will, Tyro, and Hawkins's team, the ship's descent slowed further. However, they were still on a trajectory towards Earth, and time was running out. "We need to send a message to Earth," Will realized. "Let them know we're not a threat." Tyro nodded, her earlier hostility replaced by a grudging respect. "I will compose a message explaining our situation." As Tyro began transmitting, Will turned to Hawkins. "Commander, there's something else you need to know. The Xindi, they're not our enemies. This whole thing was just a misunderstanding." Hawkins raised an eyebrow, his expression guarded. "A misunderstanding that nearly led to an invasion of Earth?" Will shook his head. "It's more complicated than that. I've seen their data, their history. They're not here to conquer us. They're scientists, explorers. We need to find a way to communicate, to understand each other." As Will spoke, the ship's systems began to stabilize. The message from Tyro reached Earth, where General Steele and the world leaders listened with growing amazement. The crisis was nowhere near the end, but for the first time since Will's abduction, a glimmer of hope appeared. The fate of two species hung in the balance, with the potential for either devastating conflict or a new era of interstellar understanding. Cooperation. The fate of two species hung in the balance, with the potential for either devastating conflict or a new era of interstellar understanding. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently, throwing everyone off balance. Will grabbed onto a nearby console to steady himself, his enhanced mind already processing the incoming data. "We're losing altitude rapidly," he announced, fingers flying over the alien controls. "The gravitational compensators are failing." Tyro rushed to his side, her multiple eyes scanning the readouts. "The power surge damaged our primary systems. We can't maintain orbit." Commander Hawkins stepped forward, his face grim. "What are our options?" Will's mind raced, processing the alien technology at an unprecedented speed. "We need to reroute power from non-essential systems to the engines. It won't stop our descent, but it might buy us enough time to attempt an emergency landing." Tyro nodded, her earlier hostility replaced by grudging respect for Will's newfound abilities. Together, they began the delicate process of redirecting the ship's power. As Will and Tyro worked feverishly, Hawkins turned to his team. "Secure the perimeter. We don't know how the rest of the Xindi crew will react to this situation." The team moved out, their advanced stealth gear allowing them to navigate the chaotic corridors undetected. They hadn't gone far when they encountered a group of Xindi security forces led by an imposing male officer. "Halt!" the Xindi officer commanded, raising his weapon. "Identify yourselves!" Hawkins stepped forward, his hands raised in a gesture of peace. "I'm Commander Jack Hawkins of Earth. We're here to help prevent a catastrophe." The Xindi officer, Captain Zorn, hesitated. His antennae twitched as he assessed the situation. "Our ship is failing. How can we trust you?" "Because right now, we're all in danger," Hawkins replied. "Human and Xindi alike. We need to work together if we want to survive this." A tense moment passed before Zorn lowered his weapon. "Very well. A temporary ceasefire. Lead the way to your human." Back on the bridge, Will and Tyro had managed to slow the ship's descent, but Earth's gravity continued to pull them down inexorably. Will's enhanced vision picked up the approaching figures of Hawkins and the Xindi security team. "Commander," Will called out, relief evident in his voice, "we've stabilized our trajectory somewhat, but we're still going down. We need to find a safe landing zone. Hawkins nodded, quickly assessing the situation. What about that remote area in the Nevada desert? It's sparsely populated and far from major cities. Tyro's fingers danced over the controls, bringing up a topographical map of the suggested area. It's possible, but our structural integrity is compromised. A complete crash landing is highly probable. Will's mind raced, processing possibilities at lightning speed. What if we jettison the outer hull? It would reduce our mass and heat buildup during atmospheric entry. Zorn stepped forward, his earlier hostility replaced by grudging respect. It's risky, but it might be our only chance. As the team worked to implement their desperate plan, the ship entered Earth's atmosphere. Alarms blared as the heat of re-entry battered the vessel's compromised structure. Will's enhanced abilities allowed him to predict and counteract system failures before they occurred. His fingers flew over the controls, making split-second adjustments that kept them from breaking apart. Tyro watched him with growing amazement. "How are you doing this?" she asked, her scientific curiosity overriding her earlier misconceptions about human capabilities. "I don't know," Will admitted, not taking his eyes off the controls. "It's like I can see the patterns in the data, understand the ship's systems on an intuitive level." The Nevada desert loomed large in their view screen as the Xindi ship, now stripped to its core, hurtled towards the ground. Will and Tyro worked in perfect synchronization, extending emergency force fields around the ship's vital areas. "Brace for impact!" Hawkins shouted as the ground rushed up to meet them. The ship struck the desert floor with a thunderous impact, skidding across the sand and leaving a miles-long trench in its wake. Inside, the crew was tossed about violently despite the inertial dampeners. Will felt a sharp pain in his side as he was thrown against a console, but he pushed the discomfort aside, focusing on keeping the ship's remaining systems online. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the ship ground to a halt. Silence fell, broken only by the hiss of ruptured coolant lines and the groans of the battered crew. Will struggled to his feet, helping Tyro up. "Is everyone all right?" he called out, scanning the bridge for injuries. Before anyone could respond, a new sound cut through the air, the unmistakable whine of aircraft engines. Through the cracked view screen, Will could see a contingent of Earth's military forces approaching, led by several heavily armed vehicles. "We've got company," Hawkins announced, his voice tense. Will nodded, straightening his torn shirt. "I'll go out first. Maybe I can explain the situation before things escalate." As Will stepped out of the crashed ship, he found himself facing a line of armed soldiers, their weapons trained on the alien vessel. At their center stood a stern-faced man with the bearing of a high-ranking officer. "I'm General Marcus Steele," the man announced, his voice carrying across the desert air. "Identify yourself and state your intentions." Will took a deep breath, acutely aware of the weight of the moment. "My name is Will Roberts. I'm a human who was accidentally abducted by the Xindi. This crash, it's all been a misunderstanding." General Steele's eyes narrowed. "A misunderstanding that nearly led to an alien invasion?" "Not an invasion," Will explained, gesturing for Tyro to join him. "The Xindi are scientists, explorers. They made an error in interpreting human biology, which led to my abduction. But now we have a chance for something unprecedented. Peaceful first contact." Tyro stepped forward, her alien features causing a ripple of unease among the human soldiers. "He speaks the truth," she said, her voice translated by the ship's remaining systems. "We offer our sincerest apologies for the distress we have caused. We come seeking knowledge, not conflict." General Steele considered their words, his expression unreadable. After a tense moment, he lowered his weapon slightly. "I'm going to need a full debriefing from both of you, as well as Commander Hawkins." As the situation began to stabilize, Will noticed Tyro examining him with renewed curiosity. The shared experience of survival had forged an unexpected bond between them, bridging the gap between their species. While Steele organized a temporary camp around the crash site, teams of scientists and military personnel swarmed the area, securing the Xindi technology and tending to the injured. Will found himself at the center of it all, acting as a bridge between humans and Xindi. As night fell over the desert, casting long shadows across the wreckage, Will watched Tyro engage in animated discussion with a group of Earth scientists. Her earlier misconceptions had been replaced by genuine scientific curiosity, and the potential for mutual understanding and cooperation was becoming increasingly apparent. Yet even as hope bloomed in the desert, Will knew that significant challenges lay ahead. Earth now faced the monumental task of dealing with a crashed alien ship on its soil and a group of stranded Xindi. The next few hours would be crucial in determining the course of human-Xindi relations, and potentially the future of both species. Will rubbed his aching side, exhaustion beginning to set in as the adrenaline wore off. He knew that his journey was far from finished. As he looked out over the bustling camp, where humans and Xindi worked side by side to address the immediate crisis, he couldn't help but wonder what the dawn would bring. The fate of two worlds now rested on the foundation of understanding they would build in the coming days. Days passed in a blur of activity as the crash site transformed into a bustling compound. Will found himself at the center of it all, his enhanced mind processing the constant influx of information from both humans and Xindi. General Steele had set up a command post on the outskirts of the crash zone, coordinating with world leaders in hushed video conferences. "Roberts, a word!" Steele called out as Will passed by on his way to the Xindi ship. Will approached, noting the dark circles under the general's eyes. "Sir?" "We're walking a tightrope here," Steele said, his voice low. "The public's getting restless. Rumors are spreading faster than we can contain them." As if on cue, Steele's tablet lit up with a news alert. Will caught a glimpse of a blurry image showing the Xindi ship's silhouette against the desert sky. The headline read, "Alien Invasion or Government Hoax." Steele swiped the notification away with a grimace. "I need you to keep the Xindi calm and cooperative. We can't afford any misunderstandings right now." Will nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "I'll do my best, sir." Inside the ship, Will found Tyro hunched over a console, her multiple eyes darting between readouts. She looked up as he entered, her antennae twitching in what he had come to recognize as a sign of excitement. "Will, come look at this," she called, gesturing him over. As Will leaned in, he felt a flutter in his stomach that had nothing to do with the alien technology before him. Tyro's scent, reminiscent of ozone and something undefinably alien, filled his nostrils. He pushed the feeling aside, focusing on the display. "I've been comparing our physiologies," Tyro explained, bringing up side-by-side images of human and Xindi cellular structures. "The way your body adapted to our enhancements, it's unprecedented. Your neuroplasticity is off the charts." Will studied the images, his enhanced mind picking up patterns and connections faster than he could consciously process them. "It's like our biologies are compatible in ways we never expected." Tyro's eyes widened. A gesture Will had learned indicated intense interest. "Exactly. The implications for both our species are enormous." Their excitement was interrupted by the sound of heavy footsteps. Captain Zorn strode onto the bridge, his posture rigid with tension. "Tyro, what progress have you made?" he demanded, casting a wary glance at Will. Tyro straightened, her demeanor becoming more formal. "Captain, I was just explaining to Will." "I don't care about explanations," Zorn cut her off. "We need results. The longer we stay here, the greater the risk." Will stepped forward, sensing the captain's growing anxiety. "Captain Zorn, I assure you that General Steele and his team are doing everything they can to ensure your safety." Zorn's antennae flattened against his head, a clear sign of agitation. "And what of the additional military units that arrived this morning? Are they for our safety as well?" Will took a deep breath, realizing he needed to defuse the situation quickly. "I have an idea that might help ease tensions on both sides," he said, looking between Zorn and Tyro. "What if we invited a small group of human scientists aboard for a short orbital flight?" Zorn's eyes narrowed. "You want to give them access to our technology?" "It would be a gesture of trust," Will explained. "A chance to demonstrate your peaceful intentions and satisfy some of the curiosity that's fueling these rumors." Tyro nodded slowly, her antennae perking up. "It could also provide valuable data on how humans react to our technology in a space environment." After a long moment, Zorn gave a curt nod. "I will consider it, but make no mistake, if I sense any threat to my crew or our mission, We will depart immediately. As Zorn left, Will turned to Tyro. We need to get this ship space-worthy as soon as possible. Can you walk me through the repair process? For the next several hours, Will and Tyro worked side by side, their hands brushing occasionally as they reconnected circuits and realigned power couplings. Despite the urgency of their task, Will found himself hyper-aware of Tyro's presence, her alien grace captivating him in ways he couldn't fully comprehend. Outside the ship, the compound buzzed with activity. General Steele, after much deliberation, had agreed to Will's proposal. A team of top scientists was assembled, along with a military observer that Steele insisted on including. As night fell, Will emerged from the ship to find the compound transformed. Additional security checkpoints had been set up, and he could see snipers positioned on nearby ridges. The atmosphere was tense, electric with anticipation. Will was making his way back to his quarters when a commotion near the perimeter caught his attention. A group of protesters had gathered, their angry shouts carrying across the desert air. "No aliens on Earth," one sign read. Another proclaimed, "Humans first." Will felt a chill run down his spine. He knew that fear and misinformation were spreading, but seeing it firsthand was jarring. As he watched, a figure stepped forward from the crowd, his voice cutting through the chaos. "They claim to come in peace, but can we trust them?" the man shouted, his words met with cheers from the crowd. "I say we take action now, before it's too late." Will recognized the speaker from news reports. John Graves, a former military officer, turned radical anti-alien activist. Graves locked eyes with Will, his gaze filled with a mixture of fear and commitment that made Will's enhanced senses prickle with danger. Turning away from the unsettling scene, Will hurried back to the ship. He needed to talk to Tyro, to warn her about the growing unrest. As he entered the bridge, he found her staring at a data display, her posture rigid with shock. "Tyro, what's wrong?" Will asked, moving to her side. She turned to him, her eyes wide with confusion and a hint of betrayal. "Will, I've found something in our data cores. Something about the true purpose of our mission to Earth. I don't understand. This can't be right." Before Tyro could elaborate, alarms began blaring throughout the ship. Captain Zorn's voice crackled over the intercom, tense and urgent. "All crew to battle stations. We're under attack." Will rushed to the nearest viewport, his enhanced vision piercing the darkness outside. He could see flashes of weapons fire, hear the distant sound of explosions. The anti-alien faction had launched their assault. As chaos erupted around them, Will realized that the delicate balance they had been maintaining was about to shatter. The Xindi ship, Earth's military, and a radical human faction were on a collision course, with the fate of two worlds hanging in the balance. The ship's engines roared to life, responding to the perceived threat. Will felt the deck vibrate beneath his feet as the vessel prepared for emergency launch. He turned to Tyro, seeing his own mix of fear and drive reflected in her alien features. "We need to stop this," Will said, his mind racing to find a solution. "If that ship takes off with the human scientists on board, there's no telling how Earth will respond." Tyro nodded, her fingers flying over the control panels. "I'm trying to override the automated launch sequence, but the systems are in chaos. Someone or something is interfering with our controls." Outside, the battle raged on. Will could see General Steele directing his forces, trying to repel John Graves and his followers. The night sky was lit up with tracer fire and the glow of burning vehicles. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently. Will stumbled, catching himself on a console. He looked up to see Captain Zorn entering the bridge, his face a mask of stubborn persistence. "We have no choice," Zorn announced. "We must leave now or risk destruction." Will opened his mouth to protest, but it was too late. The ship's engines reached full power, and with a deafening roar, the vessel began to rise. Through the viewports, Will watched as the ground fell away, the compound shrinking to a collection of toy-like structures. As they ascended through the atmosphere, klaxons blared throughout the ship. Warning lights flashed on every console, indicating the strain on the partially repaired systems. "We're losing stability," Tyro called out, her voice tight with concentration. "The repairs weren't complete. We might not make it to orbit." Will's enhanced mind raced, processing the flood of data from the ship's systems. He moved to Tyro's side, his hands joining hers on the controls. Together, they worked to stabilize the ship's ascent, their movements in perfect synchronization. As they broke through the cloud layer, Will caught a glimpse of the curve of the Earth below. It was breathtakingly beautiful, but the moment of awe was short-lived. On one of the monitors, he saw a new threat emerging. Earth's defense systems had detected their launch and were treating it as an act of aggression. "Incoming missiles!" Captain Zorn shouted, his antennae flat against his head in alarm. Will felt the weight of two worlds on his shoulders, as he realized that the next few moments would determine the future of human-Xindi relations. With Tyro at his side and the fate of both their species hanging in the balance, he prepared to face the greatest challenge of his life. The Xindi ship continued its unstable ascent, caught between the chaos they'd left behind on Earth and the new dangers emerging in the dark expanse of space. Space. Will's enhanced senses registered every vibration of the straining hull, every fluctuation in the ship's power systems. Beside him, Tyro's fingers danced across the control panels, her multiple eyes darting between readouts. "We're losing attitude control," Tyro called out, her voice tight with concentration. "The starboard thrusters are failing." Will leaned in, his mind processing the flood of data faster than he could consciously comprehend. "Reroute power from the auxiliary life support to compensate," he suggested, his hands joining Tyro's on the controls. As they worked in tandem, Will became acutely aware of their proximity. Tyro's alien scent filled his nostrils, a mix of ozone and something undefinably extraterrestrial. Their fingers brushed as they manipulated the ship's systems, sending an electric tingle up Will's arm. Suddenly, a new voice cut through the chaos. "Let me help!" Dr. Elena Chen, the lead human scientist, pushed her way onto the bridge. Her dark eyes gleamed with commitment as she took in the scene. "I've been studying your power distribution network. If we recalibrate the flux capacitors, we might be able to stabilize the thrusters." Captain Zorn's antennae twitched with skepticism, but he nodded curtly. "Do it." As Dr. Chen joined Will and Tyro at the controls, the ship lurched violently. Through the viewports, Will could see the curvature of Earth below, a breathtaking blue marble suspended in the void of space. The beauty of the sight was marred by the streaks of incoming missiles, Earth's defense systems reacting to their unscheduled launch. "Evasive maneuvers!" Zorn barked, taking control of the ship's defensive systems. His earlier suspicion of the humans seemed to waver as he witnessed their cooperation in this crisis. Will's enhanced mind raced, processing information from multiple sources simultaneously. He could see the strain on Tyro's face, feel the tremors in the ship's hull, and hear the rising pitch of the overtaxed engines. Time seemed to slow as he made split-second calculations, adjusting power levels and thruster outputs within human precision. "It's working," Tyro exclaimed, her antennae perking up with excitement. "We're regaining stability." As the ship's ascent smoothed out, Will allowed himself a moment of relief. But the reprieve was short-lived. A new alert blared from the long-range sensors. "Unknown vessel approaching," Zorn announced, his voice tight with tension. It's Xindi." The bridge fell silent as a transmission crackled through the ship's communication system. A stern, authoritative voice filled the air. "Damaged Xindi vessel. This is Commander Krell of the rescue ship Starfire. Prepare for immediate transfer of all Xindi personnel and surrender of human captives." Will's stomach dropped. He glanced at Tyro, seeing his own concern mirrored in her alien features. "Captain," he said, turning to Zorn, "if we comply, it could be seen as an act of aggression against Earth. We need to stall for time." Zorn's eyes narrowed, but he nodded slowly. "What do you propose?" "Let me speak with Commander Krell," Will said. "I'll explain our situation, the cooperation between our species. Maybe we can avoid an interstellar incident." As Zorn considered, Dr. Chen spoke up. "Captain, with your permission, I'd like to analyze the Starfire's energy signatures. Something about their approach doesn't feel right." Zorn hesitated, then gave a curt nod. "Proceed, but quickly." Will took a deep breath, steadying himself before opening a channel to the Starfire. "Commander Krell, this is Will Roberts, human liaison aboard the Xindi vessel. we request a moment to explain our situation. Krell's voice came back, sharp with impatience. You have 1 minute, human. Make it count. As Will began to recount the events that had led to their current predicament, he watched Dr. Chen work feverishly at a nearby console, her brow furrowed in concentration as she analyzed the incoming data. Commander, Will continued, what you're seeing is not a hostage situation, but a collaborative effort between our species. The human scientists aboard have been instrumental in repairing the damage to this ship. Collaboration? Krell scoffed. The High Council would never authorize such a thing. Prepare for boarding. Wait, Dr. Chen called out, her voice urgent. Captain Zorn, the Starfire's weapons systems are powered up. Their intentions may not be as benevolent as they claim. The atmosphere on the bridge grew tense as this information sank in. Will could see the conflict in Zorn's eyes, the captain's earlier mistrust of humans warring with the evidence of their recent cooperation. Before anyone could respond, a new alarm blared. Tyro's hands flew across her console, her eyes widening in alarm. Life support systems are failing, she announced. The strain of our ascent must have damaged the environmental controls. Will locked eyes with Tyro, a silent understanding passing between them. Without a word, they both moved to the environmental control station, their earlier teamwork evolving into an almost telepathic connection. As they worked to stabilize the life support systems, Will became aware of a profound shift in the dynamics aboard the ship. Humans and a Xindi, thrown together by circumstance, were now united in their struggle for survival. Dr. Chen joined them, offering insights on how to integrate human technology with the Xindi systems. Captain Zorn, after a moment's hesitation, began relaying their status to Commander Krell, emphasizing the cooperation between the species. Hours seemed to pass in minutes as they raced against time. Will's enhanced mind processed data at an incredible rate, allowing him to make intuitive leaps that bridged the gap between human and Xindi technology. Tyro's deep understanding of her ship's systems complemented his innovations perfectly. Just as they managed to stabilize the life support systems, a new transmission cut through the tense atmosphere of the bridge. It was General Steele's voice addressing both the damaged Xindi ship and the Starfire. This is General Steele of Earth's United Defense Force, he began, his tone firm but diplomatic. We propose a compromise. Allow the human scientists to return to Earth with their data intact, and we will permit the Xindi vessels to depart our solar system peacefully. The bridge fell silent as they awaited Commander Krell's response. Will could feel the weight of two worlds hanging in the balance, the future of human-Xindi relations hinging on this moment. As they waited, Will's enhanced senses picked up an anomaly in the ship's database. Following his instinct, he dove deeper into the data, his eyes widening as he uncovered a startling truth. Tyro, he whispered, gesturing her over. Look at this. The High Council. They knew about Earth all along. Our first contact wasn't an accident. Tyro's antennae drooped in shock as she processed the information. But why? Why the deception? Will's mind raced, connecting the dots. They were testing us, assessing our reactions, our defenses. This whole mission was a ruse. As the implications of this discovery sank in, Commander Krell's voice crackled over the comm system, his tone noticeably less certain than before. We will consider your proposal, General Steele. Will and Tyro exchanged a loaded glance. They now held information that could reshape the future of both their species. But with life support systems barely stable and tensions still high, they faced a crucial decision: reveal the truth and risk further chaos, or withhold it in the name of peace. As Krell and Steele continued their negotiations, Will felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. The choices made in the next few moments would echo across the stars, determining the course of human-Xindi relations for generations to come. Will's heart raced as he made the decision that would change everything. With a nod to Tyro, he initiated the data transfer, sending the shocking truth about the Xindi High Council's deception to both General Steele and Commander Krell. The effect was immediate. The bridge of the damaged Xindi ship fell silent as the implications of their action sank in. Will watched the confusion spread across Captain Zorn's face, his antennae twitching erratically. "What is the meaning of this?" Commander Krell's voice crackled over the comm, a mix of anger and disbelief evident in his tone. "Captain Zorn, explain yourself." Zorn, still processing the information himself, stammered, I had no knowledge of this, Commander. I assure you, I am as surprised as you are." Meanwhile, General Steele's voice cut through the chaos. "All Earth defense systems, go to high alert. I want every satellite and ground-based weapon ready for potential hostilities." The tension on the bridge ratcheted up several notches. Will could feel the weight of what they'd done pressing down on him. He exchanged a glance with Tyro, seeing his own mix of fear and dedication mirrored in her alien eyes. Suddenly, a new alarm blared, cutting through the tense atmosphere. Tyro's hands flew across her console, her multiple eyes widening in alarm. "Life support is critical," she announced. "We have minutes before total system failure." Will's enhanced mind kicked into overdrive, processing potential solutions at an inhuman speed. "The artificial gravity generators," he said, turning to Dr. Chen. "If we repurpose them, we might be able to create a temporary atmospheric bubble around the ship." Dr. Chen's eyes lit up with understanding. "It could work," she said, already moving to a nearby console. "But it'll destabilize our orbit. We'll start descending towards Earth." "Do it," Captain Zorn ordered, his earlier hesitation replaced by unwavering persistence. As they worked feverishly to implement their desperate plan, Will became aware of a new transmission cutting through the chaos. It was a voice he recognized all too well. John Graves. "Citizens of Earth," Graves's voice rang out, dripping with manufactured panic. "The alien threat is real and imminent. The Xindi have been planning an invasion for years. Arm yourselves. Trust no one." Will cursed under his breath. Somehow, Graves had escaped and gotten access to a communication array. His manipulated version of the Xindi data was spreading like wildfire, inciting global panic. The ship lurched violently, snapping Will's attention back to their immediate crisis. The repurposed gravity generators had created a breathable atmosphere around the ship, but as Dr. Chen had predicted, they were now in a rapidly decaying orbit. "We're descending too fast," Tyro called out, her voice strained. "At this rate, we'll burn up in the atmosphere in less than an hour." As if on cue, Commander Krell's voice came through the comm again. "Damaged Xindi vessel, your descent has been noted. We are prepared to extend our shields around your ship, but only if the humans agree to be taken into Xindi custody." Will's mind raced, calculating trajectories and possibilities. A risky plan began to form in his mind. "Commander Krell," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around him, "I have a counter-proposal. We use our ship's momentum to slingshot around Earth and rendezvous with the human space station in orbit. Your ship could assist in the maneuver. This way, we all survive, and we have a chance to sort out this mess face-to-face." There was a long pause. Will could almost hear the gears turning in Krell's mind. Finally, the Xindi commander replied, "An interesting suggestion, human, but such a maneuver would be extremely dangerous. Why should we risk it?" "Because," Will said, "if we fail, you lose your only chance to get answers about the High Council's deception. And trust me, Commander, you want those answers as much as we do." Another pause, then, "Very well, we will assist in your maneuver, but be warned, any sign of treachery, and we will not hesitate to destroy your vessel." As Will relayed the plan to General Steele, he could hear the reluctance in the general's voice. The situation on the ground was deteriorating rapidly due to Graves's broadcast, but faced with the alternative of potential interstellar conflict, Steele agreed to mobilize Earth's space assets to assist in the maneuver. Just as they began preparations for the daring slingshot around Earth, Tyro's console lit up with a new warning. "Solar flare detected," she announced, her voice tense. "It'll hit just as we make our approach. Our navigation systems won't survive the electromagnetic interference." Will felt a moment of despair. They had come so far, overcome so much, only to be thwarted by a quirk of stellar weather. But as he looked around the bridge, at the humans and Xindi working together against impossible odds, he refused to give up. "We'll have to shield the equipment," he said, his mind already racing through possibilities. "Dr. Chen, can we repurpose some of the hull plating? Use it to create a Faraday cage around our critical systems?" Dr. Chen nodded, her fingers flying over her console. "It's possible, but we'll need to reroute power from non-essential systems, and someone will have to go outside the ship to manually adjust the plating. Will stood up, his decision made. I'll go. My enhanced physiology gives me the best chance of surviving out there. Tyro looked at him, her alien features showing clear concern. I'm going with you, she said firmly. You'll need someone who knows the ship's external layout. As they prepared for their dangerous spacewalk, Will could feel the ship's descent accelerating. The heat of atmospheric entry was beginning to build, creating a fiery glow visible through the viewports. Time was running out. With a final nod to Captain Zorn, Will and Tyro entered the airlock. As the outer door opened, revealing the vast, star-studded expanse of space and the blue curve of Earth below, Will felt a moment of awe despite their dire situation. Then, tethered together into the ship, they began their perilous task. The fate of two worlds hung in the balance as they worked to shield their vessel from the incoming solar flare, all while plummeting towards Earth's atmosphere in a desperate bid to change the course of human-Xindi relations forever. Will and Tyro worked feverishly, their movements synchronized despite the zero-gravity environment. The ship's hull creaked ominously as they secured the last of the makeshift shielding. That's it, Will said, his breath fogging his helmet. Let's get back inside. They barely made it through the airlock when the ship lurched violently. Will's enhanced reflexes allowed him to grab a handhold, catching Tyro with his free arm as she floated past. What's happening? Tyro asked, her antennae quivering. Captain Zorn's voice crackled over the comm system. Brace yourselves. We're initiating the slingshot maneuver. Will and Tyro exchanged a glance before racing back to the bridge. The view through the main viewport was dizzying. Earth's curvature filled half the screen, while stars wheeled dizzyingly in the other half. Dr. Chen was strapped into her chair, her fingers flying over her console. The hull integrity is holding, but barely, she reported. We're experiencing G-forces beyond the ship's design limits. Will felt the intense pressure as they skimmed the upper atmosphere. His enhanced physiology allowed him to remain functional, but he could see the strain on the faces of the others. Captain Zorn sat rigidly in the command chair, his four-fingered hands holding onto the armrests. His eyes never left the holographic display showing their trajectory. Adjust our angle by 0.3 degrees, he ordered. We need to thread the needle here. Through the cacophony of creaking metal and blaring alarms, a new voice cut in. Commander Krell. Damaged Xindi vessel, we are extending our shields around you. Prepare for energy fluctuations. True to his word, a shimmering field of energy enveloped their ship. Will could feel the difference immediately. The violent shaking subsided slightly, though the pressure remained intense. Suddenly, the ship's systems flickered. The main lights went out, replaced by the dim red glow of emergency lighting. Solar flare incoming, Tyro announced, her voice tense. Communications will be... Her words were cut off as the comm system dissolved into static. The ship's internal gravity fluctuated wildly, causing loose objects to float before slamming back to the floor. Will unstrapped himself, pushing off towards the environmental controls. We need to reroute power to life support, he called out. Tyro nodded, joining him at the console. As they worked, Will caught glimpses of Earth through the viewport. Despite their dire situation, he couldn't help but marvel at the beauty of his home planet, the blue oceans, swirling cloud patterns, and the delicate web of lights on the night side created a breathtaking vista. Captain Zorn's voice cut through Will's momentary distraction. All non-essential systems, power down now. We need every joule of energy for this maneuver. The ship groaned as Zorn expertly guided it through the complex trajectory. Panels began to tear away from the hull, leaving a trail of debris in their wake. Captain, Dr. Chen called out, her voice strained. At this rate, we won't have enough mass to maintain our course to the space station. Zorn's antenna twitched in what Will had come to recognize as a sign of intense concentration. Understood. Prepare for emergency jettison of all non-essential modules. Will felt a momentary pang as he realized this would include the lab where he'd spent so much time. But there was no room for sentiment now. Survival was all that mattered. A series of muffled explosions rippled through the ship as the jettisoned modules broke away. The effect was immediate. Their trajectory stabilized, and the hull stopped its ominous creaking. Just as they began to feel a glimmer of hope, a new alarm blared. "Proximity alert," Tyro announced. "Commander Krell's ship is approaching rapidly." Before anyone could react, they felt a solid thump. The view screen showed Krell's much larger vessel now physically linked to theirs, acting as a tug. "This is Krell." The Xindi commander's voice broke through the static. "We will guide you to the human station. Pray to whatever deities you believe in that their aim is true." As if on cue, the International Space Station Alpha came into view. Even from a distance, Will could see the frantic activity around the station. Robotic arms moved with surprising grace, clearing a path through the debris field their ship had left behind. "This is Colonel Marcus Chen of the ISS Alpha." A new voice joined the chorus. "We are clearing a path for your approach. Be advised, our tracking systems are compromised due to the solar activity. You'll need to guide yourselves in for the final approach." Will watched in awe as the robotic arms swept aside chunks of metal and composites that could have easily punctured their hull. It was a ballet of technology and human ingenuity, performed against the backdrop of Earth and stars. As they drew closer to the station, the solar flare reached its peak. A wave of electromagnetic energy washed over them, causing every system to crash simultaneously. The ship was plunged into darkness and silence. "Manual override," Will shouted, already moving towards the docking controls. "Tyro, I need your eyes." In the zero-gravity environment, they pushed and pulled their way to the airlock. Tyro's multiple eyes darted around, taking in every detail of their approach. 3 degrees starboard," she called out. Will grunted, using all his enhanced strength to turn a manual crank. The ship creaked as it slowly aligned with the station's docking port. "Almost there," Tyro encouraged. "Just a little more." With a resounding clang that vibrated through the entire ship, they made contact. The docking clamps engaged, locking them firmly to the International Space Station Alpha. As the emergency airlocks hissed open, Will and Tyro shared a moment of relief. They had made it. But as Will looked out at the mix of human and Xindi faces greeting them, he realized their journey was far from finished. The real challenge, bridging the gap between their species, was just beginning. The airlock hissed open, revealing a crowd of humans and Xindi, their faces a mix of curiosity, apprehension, and relief. Colonel Marcus Chen stepped forward, his uniform crisp despite the chaos. "Welcome aboard the International Space Station Alpha," he said, his voice steady. "I'm Colonel Chen, Station Commander." Will nodded, acutely aware of the tension in the air. "William Riker, formerly of Earth's Diplomatic Corps. This is Tyro, our Xindi navigator." Tyro's antenna twitched as she took in the scene. "Your assistance was appreciated," she said, her words carefully chosen. As introductions continued, Will couldn't help but marvel at the sight before him. Humans and Xindi standing side by side in the cramped confines of the space station. It was a scene he couldn't have imagined just days ago. But the moment of wonder was short-lived. An alarm blared, cutting through the murmur of conversations. Red lights flashed along the corridor walls. "What's happening?" Will asked, his body tensing. Colonel Chen's face darkened. "Life support malfunction. Follow me to the command center." As they hurried through the station's twisting corridors, Will could feel the change in the air. It was becoming thicker, harder to breathe. The Xindi around him seemed less affected, but he could see the strain on the faces of his fellow humans. They burst into the command center, a circular room filled with holographic displays and control panels. A man in an engineer's uniform was hunched over a console, his fingers flying across the controls. "Status report, Dr. Wong," Chen barked. The engineer straightened, his face grim. "It's the carbon dioxide scrubbers, sir. They're failing. We've got maybe 3 hours before the air becomes toxic." Will's mind raced. "Can we evacuate?" Chen shook his head. "Not enough time to get everyone off. We need to fix this." Dr. Wong spoke up. "I can guide a repair team, but it'll be dangerous. The maintenance shafts are narrow, and with the system malfunctioning, there's a risk of electrical discharge." Will and Tyro exchanged a glance. In that moment, a silent understanding passed between them. "We'll do it," Will said, Tyro nodding in agreement. Chen looked skeptical. "Are you sure? You've already been through hell. All the more reason, Tyro replied. We know how to work together. Within minutes, they were being fitted with makeshift spacesuits, a patchwork of human and Xindi technology. Will couldn't help but see the symbolism in their cobbled-together gear. As they prepared to enter the maintenance shaft, Will caught sight of Captain Zorn. The Xindi officer was standing near a communication panel, his face twisted in concentration as he listened to something through an earpiece. Before Will could ponder this, Dr. Wong's voice crackled through his helmet. All right, you're looking for junction box A7. It should be about 50 meters in. Will and Tyro entered the shaft, the tight space forcing them to crawl on hands and knees. The air grew hotter as they progressed, and Will could hear the ominous hum of malfunctioning equipment. There, Tyro said, her multiple eyes giving her an advantage in the dim light. She pointed to a panel on the wall, sparks occasionally shooting from its seams. As they worked to open the panel, Will couldn't help but marvel at how smoothly they functioned as a team. Tyro's nimble fingers manipulated the alien technology, while Will used his enhanced strength to hold back the heated metal. Careful, Dr. Wong's voice warned. You'll need to bypass the main power coupling. One wrong move and... A sudden surge of electricity cut him off. Will felt a jolt run through his suit, but Tyro had already anticipated the danger. Her hand shot out, stabilizing the coupling. Thanks, Will gasped. Tyro's eyes met his through their visors. We protect each other now, she said simply. As they continued their delicate work, Will's mind wandered to the strange sight of Captain Zorn at the communication panel. Something about the Xindi officer's posture had seemed off, almost furtive. Back in the command center, Zorn was indeed grappling with a monumental decision. The encrypted transmission from the Xindi High Council played in his ear, each word feeling like a hammer blow. Admiral Vex has assumed control. All personnel ordered to disengage from human contact. Battle fleet en route to eliminate evidence. Zorn's antennae drooped as the full weight of the situation hit him. His entire career, his loyalty to the Xindi hierarchy, all of it pushed him to follow these new orders. And yet... His eyes fell on a display showing Will and Tyro working together in the maintenance shaft. Humans and Xindi cooperating, literally keeping each other alive. In that moment, Zorn made his choice. He turned to Colonel Chen, his voice low but firm. Colonel, we have a situation. A Xindi battle fleet is on its way, with orders to destroy this station and all evidence of our presence. Chen's eyes widened, but to his credit, he didn't hesitate. General Steele needs to know. We need to prepare Earth's defenses. As Chen relayed the warning to Earth, alarms began blaring once again. But this time, it was accompanied by a welcome sound, the hum of the life support systems returning to full power. Will and Tyro emerged from the maintenance shaft, their suits scorched and battered. The relief on the faces of both humans and Xindi was palpable, but it was short-lived. Colonel Chen approached them, his face grim. We've got another problem. A Xindi battle fleet is on its way, and they're not coming to negotiate. Will's heart sank. After everything they'd been through, after all the progress they'd made, it seemed the universe was determined to pit their species against each other once more. But as he looked around at the mixed crew of the space station, at Tyro standing steadfast beside him, at Captain Zorn who had chosen to warn them, he felt a glimmer of hope. They had overcome impossible odds before. Perhaps they could do it again. The station's long-range sensors lit up, showing the approaching Xindi fleet. Earth's hastily assembled defenses moved to intercept, a mix of conventional weapons and unfamiliar technology that Will suspected came from some unknown source. As evacuation orders were given and pods began launching towards Earth, Dr. Elena Chen approached with a determined look in her eyes. I have a plan, she said, but it's risky. Will listened as she outlined her idea to repurpose the station's communications array into an electromagnetic pulse generator. It was audacious, potentially suicidal, but it might be their only chance. As the plan was set in motion, Will and Tyro found themselves on the observation deck, watching as Earth's forces prepared to meet the Xindi fleet. The first streaks of weapons fire lit up the space between them, a deadly light show against the backdrop of their blue planet. An alarm sounded, signaling the final evacuation call. Will turned to Tyro, the weight of their next decision heavy in the air between them. Stay and attempt to activate the pulse, or evacuate to Earth. The fate of both their species hung on what they chose to do in the next few moments. Tyro's eyes met his, a universe of understanding passing between them. Whatever they decided, Will knew with certainty that they would face it together. As the battle began to unfold before them, they steeled themselves for the choice that would shape the future of human-Xindi relations forever. Will and Tyro exchanged a final glance, their decision made. They would stay aboard the International Space Station Alpha and activate the electromagnetic pulse generator. As the last evacuation pods launched towards Earth, Will felt a strange sense of calm wash over him. "Dr. Chen," he called out, "let's get that pulse generator online." Elena Chen nodded, her fingers already flying across the control panels. "I'm reconfiguring the communications array now. We'll need to reroute power from all non-essential systems." Tyro moved to assist, her multiple eyes darting between various displays. "I can optimize the power flow through the Xindi modules. It should give us an extra 15% output." As they worked, the station groaned and shuddered. Through the viewports, flashes of light signaled the beginning of the battle between Earth's defenses and the approaching Xindi fleet. "Watch out!" Will shouted as a shower of sparks erupted from a nearby console. He grabbed a fire extinguisher, quickly dousing the flames. "The systems are already overloading." Dr. Chen's voice was tense. "We're pushing everything to the limit. If we don't stabilize the power grid, we'll blow ourselves up before we can activate the pulse." Alarms blared as electrical fires broke out in several modules. Will and Tyro moved in tandem, fighting the blazes while continuing their work on the pulse generator. Meanwhile, on Earth, General Steele stood in the heart of a bustling command center. Holographic displays showed the positions of Earth's defenses and the incoming Xindi fleet. "Deploy the Graves Tech shields over major population centers," Steele ordered, "and get those advanced targeting systems online. We need every advantage we can get." As the experimental shields flickered to life over cities across the globe, a communications officer called out, "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the Xindi fleet." Admiral Vex's face appeared on the main screen, his expression cold and unforgiving. "This is your only warning. Surrender all Xindi personnel and destroy all evidence of our presence on your world. You have 1 hour to comply, or we will commence a full-scale assault." Steele's expression resolute. "Open a secure channel to Captain Zorn." The Xindi officer's face replaced Vex's on the screen. "Captain, we need your insight. What can you tell us about their fleet formation?" Zorn's antennae twitched as he studied the tactical displays. "There's a vulnerability here," he said, indicating a point in the Xindi formation. "Their flanks are exposed. If you can concentrate your fire on these coordinates, you might be able to disrupt their attack pattern." As Steele relayed the information to his commanders, panic began to spread through Earth's cities. The Xindi ships loomed in the sky, visible to the naked eye and impossible to ignore. John Graves strode into the command center, his eyes gleaming with a mix of fear and excitement. "General, I have a solution. I've been developing a network of ground-based energy weapons. Give me the word, and I can have them operational in minutes." Steele hesitated only for a moment before nodding. "Do it. We need every weapon we can muster." Back on the space station, Will, Tyro, and Dr. Chen worked frantically to complete the EMP device. The station's power grid fluctuated wildly, threatening to overload at any second. "We're almost there," Dr. Chen said, her voice strained. "But activating this pulse, it's going to destroy the station. We need to leave now." Will looked at Tyro, then at the approaching Xindi fleet. "No," he said firmly. "We started this and we're going to finish it." Dr. Marcus Wong stepped forward, followed by a small group of human and Xindi scientists. "We're staying too," he announced. "This is bigger than any one of us." As the final minutes ticked away, Admiral Vex's voice boomed through the station speakers. "Your time is up. Prepare to be annihilated." The Xindi fleet opened fire, their energy weapons streaking towards Earth. The experimental shields glowed brightly as they absorbed the first volley, but alarm klaxons sounded as the barriers began to weaken under the sustained assault. "Now or never," Will said, his hand hovering over the activation switch for the EMP device. Tyro placed her hand over his. "Together," she said. They pressed the switch. For a moment, nothing happened. Then a wave of crackling energy burst from the station, expanding rapidly in all directions. The pulse engulfed the Xindi fleet, causing explosions and system failures across their ships. But it didn't stop there. The wave continued towards Earth, its effect indiscriminate in its destruction of electronic systems. On the planet's surface, lights flickered and died. Communication networks went silent. Even the most advanced military installations found themselves struggling to maintain basic functions. In orbit, the Xindi fleet drifted powerless, their weapons and engines offline. Admiral Vex's flagship spun slowly, its crew scrambling to restore even basic life support systems. The International Space Station Alpha, the source of the pulse, went dark. Its fate, and that of the brave souls who had remained aboard, was unknown. As Earth slowly began to recover from the electromagnetic pulse, General Steele surveyed the scene from a hardened bunker. The Xindi threat had been neutralized, but at what cost? And what would they do with a disabled alien fleet now drifting helplessly in orbit? In the eerie silence that followed the pulse, both humans and Xindi found themselves at a crossroads. The next few hours would determine whether this moment of mutual vulnerability would lead to further conflict or pave the way for an unprecedented era of cooperation. As systems slowly came back online and the full extent of the situation became clear, all eyes turned to the skies. The disabled Xindi ships, once a looming threat, now presented a potential humanitarian crisis. With their life support systems failing, the aliens who had come to attack might soon need the help of those they had sought to destroy. The choices made in the coming hours would shape the future of human-Xindi relations. And somewhere, amidst the debris and darkness of space, the fate of Will, Tyro, and their companions hung in the balance, a testament to the power of cooperation in the face of seemingly insurmountable odds. As Earth systems gradually flickered back to life, the fate of the International Space Station Alpha hung in the balance. General Steele stood rigid in the command center, his eyes fixed on the main display as it slowly came online. Static crackled through the speakers, then cleared. "This is International Space Station Alpha," a weak voice transmitted. "We've sustained heavy damage. The station is breaking up. We're alive but trapped in the central module. Our orbit is decaying rapidly. We need immediate assistance." Steele's fist clenched. "That's Will. They're alive, but not for long if we don't act fast." He turned to his staff. "I want every available resource on this rescue operation. Contact the Xindi ships still capable of maneuvering. We'll need their help." Captain Zorn stepped forward, his antennae twitching with tenacity. "General, I can lead the rescue mission. My shuttle was shielded from the worst of the EMP. It's one of the few craft still fully operational." Steele nodded. "Do it, Captain. Bring them home." As Zorn's shuttle launched, Will and Tyro huddled with the survivors in the reinforced central module of the disintegrating station. The hull groaned ominously around them. Dr. Wong checked the readings on a battered console. "Our descent is accelerating. At this rate, we'll hit the atmosphere in less than an hour." Tyro's multiple eyes darted between the screens and the viewport, where Earth loomed ever larger. "The station's mass is working against us. As more sections break away, we'll fall faster." Will placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We've made it this far. Help is coming." Outside, the rescue mission raced against time. Zorn's shuttle led a small fleet of human and Xindi vessels, weaving through a treacherous field of debris. "Watch your six," Zorn called out as a massive solar panel tumbled past a human shuttle. "The station's breaking up faster than anticipated." The comms crackled. "Captain Zorn, this is Rescue 1. We're detecting multiple heat signatures in the central module. Confirmed survivors, but their trajectory is critical." Zorn's eyes narrowed as he studied the projected path. "They'll burn up before we can reach them at this rate." He took a deep breath. "All units, follow my lead. We're going to attempt a mid-descent intercept." The rescue fleet accelerated, plunging into the upper atmosphere behind the falling station. Flames licked at their hulls as they pushed their ships to the limit. Inside the module, alarms blared. The survivors strapped themselves in, bracing for impact. "Hull temperature critical," Dr. Chen reported, her voice steady despite the chaos. "Structural integrity failing." Will looked at Tyro, their eyes meeting in a moment of shared perseverance. Whatever happened, they would face it together. Suddenly, a new voice broke through on the comms. "Alpha Module, this is Captain Zorn. Prepare for emergency docking." Through the viewport, they saw Zorn's shuttle approaching at breakneck speed, matching their velocity precisely. With a series of precise maneuvers, he brought his ship alongside the tumbling module. "Brace for impact," Zorn shouted. The docking clamps engaged with a bone-jarring thud. Servos whined as the airlock sealed, fighting against the forces threatening to tear the ships apart. "Airlock secure," Tyro called out. "We have hard seal." Will unstrapped himself, floating towards the airlock. "Everyone move! Go, go, go!" The survivors rushed through the airlock, the heat of re-entry already beginning to penetrate the module's failing shields. Will and Tyro were the last to cross, the deck plates buckling beneath their feet as they leapt to safety. Zorn's hands flew across the controls. "All aboard! Disengaging now!" The shuttle broke free just as the module succumbed to the atmospheric friction, bursting into a ball of flame. Zorn expertly piloted them up and away, rejoining the rescue fleet as they climbed back to a stable orbit. As the adrenaline ebbed, Will looked out at the Earth below, marveling at how close they had come to disaster. Tyro joined him, her expression a mix of relief and wonder. "I never thought I'd be so happy to see your planet from this distance again," she said softly. Will smiled. It's a view that never gets old. Their moment of peace was interrupted by an incoming transmission. General Steele's face appeared on the main screen, his usually stern features softened with relief. "Well done, all of you," he said. "You've not only saved yourselves, but possibly the future of human-Xindi relations." He paused, his expression growing more serious. "We're picking up distress calls from the disabled Xindi fleet. Their life support systems are failing. We're launching relief efforts now." Will and Tyro exchanged glances. Even now, after everything, there was more work to be done. As they began their descent back to Earth, reports flooded in from around the globe. The EMP had caused widespread damage, but it had also created an unexpected opportunity. In the face of a common crisis, old rivalries were being set aside. John Graves, once the voice of anti-alien sentiment, appeared on emergency broadcasts, urging calm and cooperation. "We've seen today what we can achieve when we work together," he declared. "It's time to put aside our fears and embrace a new future, one where humans and Xindi stand side by side." Meanwhile, aboard the Xindi flagship, Admiral Vex found himself facing a mutiny. His own officers, inspired by the cooperation they had witnessed, refused to follow orders for further aggression. "Stand down, Admiral," his second-in-command said firmly. "This war is over. It's time to seek peace." As Vex was escorted to the brig, a message was sent to Earth. The Xindi fleet surrendered and requested assistance. The shuttle carrying Will, Tyro, and the other survivors touched down at a specially prepared landing site. A crowd had gathered, humans and Xindi alike, all cheering as the heroes emerged. General Steele was there to greet them, along with a Xindi delegation led by the newly appointed leader, Captain Zorn. As Will and Tyro stepped onto Earth soil, they found themselves at the center of a historic moment. Steele addressed the crowd, his voice carrying across the hushed gathering. "Today marks a new chapter in the history of both our species. We've faced destruction and instead found unity. Now we must build on this foundation." He turned to Zorn, extending his hand. The Xindi captain took it without hesitation, their handshake captured by a sea of cameras. "We are prepared to begin negotiations for a lasting peace," Zorn announced. "For too long, our peoples have been divided by fear and misunderstanding. It's time for that to change." As the crowd erupted in cheers, Will and Tyro found themselves pulled into the center of the gathering. Reporters clamored for statements, officials sought handshakes, and in the midst of it all, they caught each other's eyes. There was so much still to be done, a peace to be negotiated, planets to be rebuilt, and two vastly different cultures to be bridged. But in that moment, standing together on the planet they had both fought to protect, Will and Tyro knew that they had taken the first, crucial steps towards a shared future. The sun began to set, casting a warm glow over the gathering. As the excitement of the day began to fade, replaced by the sobering reality of the work ahead, Will and Tyro slipped away from the crowd. They found a quiet spot overlooking the landing site, where the shuttle that had brought them home gleamed in the fading light. "So," Tyro said, her multiple eyes blinking in the Xindi expression of amusement, "I believe you owe me an explanation about human reproduction." Will laughed, the tension of the past few days finally breaking. "How about we discuss it over dinner? I think we've both earned a good meal." As they walked away, their silhouettes merging in the sunset, the first stars began to appear in the sky. Among them, a new light shone, the beginning of a joint human-Xindi space station, a symbol of the cooperation that would define the years to come. The challenges ahead were immense, but so was the potential. As night fell on this new era of interspecies relations, the future stretched out before them, as vast and full of possibility as the stars themselves.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.